All right, I would like to call to order the May 8th, 2024 budget hearing. Yeah, Pam, can you lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and on to the presentation of the 24-25 budget for the Phelps-Clifton Springs School District.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, good evening, folks, and welcome to the budget hearing for the 24-25 school budget. My name is Carl Dubash, and I'm the business administrator. I'm going to try to move this presentation along because this presentation essentially is a blend of everything we've discussed over our February, March, and our April budget presentations. So what you see here, you're going to see a lot of similarities and a lot of common themes as we move through the presentation, and I'm going to try to wrap this up in about 20 minutes to give our future candidates a chance to get up here and speak and give us time to transition to our next meeting. So a quick agenda. We're going to review 2 years ago, where were we in terms of our budget goals? And where were we this year as we developed this budget? We're going to look at the highlights of the governor's enacted budget, which was passed a handful of days after our April board meeting. We're going to talk about our proposed budget, our expenditures, our revenue, compare them together, and talk about what it means for our tax levy and look at our tax levy history. We'll look at a budget analysis over the last 4 to 5, 6 years and talk about the average impact on the school tax bill, and finally visit the ballot propositions and talk about our 4 candidates running for 3 seats. So a year ago to this day, we were sitting here and talking about the 23-24 school budget, and these were our budget priorities. Specifically, I want to highlight phasing in positions that were acquired through federal funds. And protecting our long-term availability of district reserves. Because last year was the first year that Phelps-Clifton Springs was entirely fully funded in the Foundation Aid formula. And so we got an influx of state aid like we never had before, but instead of creating a spending plan and trying to spend all that money down, we said, we know that federal funds are going to sunset. Let's try to preserve and protect some of the positions we've acquired, where areas we have grown in the last 3 to 4 years with COVID money. Let's try to protect those positions because there is some uncertainty on the horizon with state budgets. And that's exactly what we did. A year later, when some of our neighbors and some of the districts across the state were hitting the panic button because of decrease in state aid, at least based on the governor's projections, we were in a good shape because we knew we had protected those positions. We knew those folks were accounted for, and we didn't have to cut staff across the board. So now our budget was much simpler in terms of, once again, protecting our district reserves so when times are bad, meeting the needs of our students and being responsible to taxpayers, and continuing to fund our reserves where we can purchase buses and plan for the future. But also now we're realizing we're starting to see what takes shape in terms of future state budgets, and now we're preparing ourselves 1 year down the road for a negative budget, potentially. So the highlights of the governor's enacted budget. The enacted budget proposed a $1.3 billion increase in school aid across the board, which was an increase in foundation aid, $429.7 million more than what the governor proposed in January. So needless to say, Save Harmless was restored. All the school districts that were where the governor proposed a reduction in state aid, those school districts were at least made whole, so to speak, or received the same amount of state aid they received the year prior. But what the governor also said was she's actually tasking the Rockefeller Institute, which is a group that essentially reports to the office of the governor. She's making them in charge, giving them $2 million and asking them to do a study of the Foundation Aid formula and to give them give her their findings in 9 months or less. The Department of Budget, business officials across the state are very weary of this because this department is not independent of the governor's office. This department reports to the governor. And from that point on, the governor takes the findings and then shares it with everyone else. So we worry about the political spin that will be put on the findings at the end of 9 months, if they can even come up with a new formula for foundation aid or for state aid. Furthermore, the governor has also, since 2006, 2007, there was an aid formula for school districts struggling with enrollment who are considering mergers. The governor said in her state budget she's redoing that formula and really incentivizing mergers or reorganization for regional high schools or school districts where enrollment is significantly declining. For those school districts thinking of a merger, she's going to make it far more financially attractive to those districts. So we can start to see what's taking shape between January and April and where the governor is headed, potentially into the future. Finally, she talked about consolidation of some pre-kindergarten programs or streamlining funding across the board and extending the retiree income waiver, which is beneficial, especially for school districts that are struggling to find staff in key areas. We sometimes can reach out to our retirees, and because of the income waiver, those retirees can come back and work for us without having to exceed a certain dollar threshold where it impacts their retirement, essentially. So here's our proposed budget. On the left-hand side, we see our expenditures broken down into the three mandatory areas: administrative, program, and capital. On the right-hand side, we've got our sources of revenue: state aid, real property taxes, reserves and debt service, and finally, other. On the bottom, you see a graph comparison where the expenditure portion of the budget, how much does administrative make up, how much does program make up, and how much does capital make up. I want to point out, a year ago, as you look at that graph on the bottom left, what was administrative 1 year ago? 10% of expenditures. Program was 75.9% of expenditures, and capital was 14.1% of expenditures. The point I'm trying to make is, as we've grown the budget from last year to this year, the proportions of the budget are still pretty much the same. You're still at about 10, 75, and 14 across the board. Switching to the right-hand side, state aid. This year, state aid is comprised of 62.3% of our overall budget. What was it last year? Exactly 62%. Real property taxes were at 34.3. I believe this year they're at about 34.7. I'm sorry, a year ago they were at 34.7. Reserves a year ago was at 1.5, it's at 1.6. And other has stayed the same, 1.8 to 1.8. Once again, as our revenue has grown, our revenue is growing within the same proportions as where it was 1 year prior. So first we're going to talk about our revenue, real quick, our state aid. Once again, based on the governor's projections, the dollar amount you see to the right-hand side, the $1.185,130,000, that represents our increase in state aid through our expense-based aid, our formula aid, our special education aid, our transportation aid. On the right-hand side, the next line, real property taxes. That represents our increase in tax levy that we're proposing 2.43%, or specifically increasing the tax levy $375,878. Reserves and debt service. How much more are we reaching into our savings account? On the previous slide, I said we went from 1.5% to 1.6%. Why? Because we're increasing how much we're reaching into our savings account by $90,000. And finally, other. The $18,881 on the fourth line represents the Sulphur Creek Solar Farm that has moved into our community, signed a 20-year pilot agreement, and the word pilot means payment in lieu of taxes. So that's an agreement that's giving us $18,881 additional next year. So those are our sources of revenue. We added one extra slide to this presentation. If you are a community member that walked in and grabbed a packet from there, you'll see this slide on the back of the handout. So at any point, feel free to turn to the back of the handout. The board members, I believe it's blended in the packet, but this is where our reserves are. The first column represents the money we took from our reserves 1 year ago. The second column is the most important column. How is the shape of our reserves? Where are our reserves currently as of July 1, 2023? Our reserves are at $10.66 million. Our auditor has said our reserves are in healthy shape, but our auditor also pointed out a very key fact. We have not deliberately grown our reserves. Our reserves actually grew year over year because of interest. If you are someone who has a savings account at home, you will know that in the past 12 to 15 months, interest rates have gone up in savings accounts to the tune of nearly 5%. So when we have a healthy amount in our reserves and we invest our money with NICLAS, we're getting about 5.25% interest on that fund. So our reserves have grown strictly based on interest, not based on our doing. And once again, we're reaching in $90,000 more, so this year we're reaching in to the tune of $740,000 into our reserves to offset our revenue. Expenditures. Expenditures, once again, are broken down into three categories: administrative, program, and capital. Like I said, the administrative portion of the budget from 2 years ago to this year is still 10% of the overall budget. That hasn't necessarily grown in proportion, but it has grown in dollar amount. What are some of our administrative costs as you look at those rows across the board? Board of Education, Central Administration and Finance, that's the Office of the Superintendent and the business office. Within that number, by the way, is our entire central business office, which is through Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES. That charge has gone up significantly, over 5%. We've seen an increase. That's a huge reason for that increase on central administration and finance. Legal, personnel, and public information, our attorneys are charging more dollar per hour. A lot of the other services included in that have also gone up. Central services and special items. One more time, we have BOCES services in our business office, but we have almost $300,000 worth of BOCES administrative services. Our internet, our network support, our financial system that BOCES supports, our food and nutrition system where our students get to punch in their student number. All those network and administrative supports add up to about $300,000. Those have increased year over year as well. Curriculum supervision, research, and planning. Several administrator salaries are included in that dollar amount, but several secretarial salaries and contractual agreements, but also PD, professional development increases are also included on that line. And finally, employee benefits. By the way, folks, you're going to see benefits broken down between administrative, you're going to see it on the next slide, program, and you're going to see it based on capital. It has to be broken in 3 different areas by law. Program, teaching and learning. It's the biggest part of the budget. It's why we're here. So when you look at the $500,009, that represents the bulk of our teacher salaries, the bulk of our occupational ed program through BOCES, where our students attend the Finger Lakes Technical and Career Center. It includes teacher aide salaries, teaching assistant salaries. The next one is our programs for students with disabilities. At the last meeting, I talked about some of those contractual agreements that are going up significantly because there are students with special needs where we can't access the service through BOCES and we have to go through private contractors. So in addition to special education teacher salaries, you're also seeing an increase in contracting with special vendors. Counseling services, athletics, Section 5, official salaries, but also we're proposing in this budget going from a 0.5 secretary in the athletic office to a full-time secretary. Transportation, fuel, oil, tires, and also extra duty bus driver salaries make up a portion of that. And finally, employee benefits. 6:13. All right, just trying to be mindful of time. Finally,
5 minutes.
Capital. We can do this. Capital, operations and maintenance of plant. Besides utilities and besides contractual services to maintain our facility, we've seen a rise in the amount of student helpers and our budget for student helpers to make sure our needs are met, especially in the evenings and on the weekends with the amount of requests. And this is a community hub between our affiliations with the YMCA, the PCC, but also our winter concerts, our athletic events, summer athletics that go on. We have a much bigger need of things happening around the clock, and we need some additional student helpers to help offset just the basic cleaning that happens in the hallways, between the hallways and classrooms. Employee benefits, once again broken down by our facilities department. And finally, debt service as a result of our capital projects. We're just finishing a $15.6 million capital project. We have to bond the money we borrowed. And so based on that, over a yearly basis, our financial advisors tell us what we owe in terms of principal and interest over the course of the year, which is going up. This slide, I think I've had it at several presentations. This slide represents our tax cap in red versus what we're requesting in blue. We are requesting from the community a 2.43% increase in the tax levy. Our tax cap says 4.73. We could certainly ask for more. We don't need more in order to close this budget. We need 2.43%, and especially over the last 10 years or so, this district in blue has stayed under the red line all but on 2 occasions. And so we've been able to meet our needs by staying under the tax cap for several years. Finally, here's a snapshot of the last 5 years. On the bottom is this year's school budget proposal. Our budget to budget is increasing by 3.76%. We're asking the community for a 2.43% an increase in the tax levy. If you compare that, the closest comparison I can find is the year 2020, 2021, to look at some numbers or some similarities. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because that was almost pre-inflation or pre-COVID funds, where things were going through the roof or inflation had climbed faster than it had in 40 years. And so I feel like we're going back to tightening the budget from where things were about 4 years ago. 2.43%, what does that mean across our 7 municipalities? If we look at assessments from last year, based on $100,000, we're estimating that if someone does not qualify for STAR, they can see an average bill increase of $71.57 per 100,000. Or with STAR, $53.42, or with enhanced STAR, $22.48. Once again, that's based on last year's assessments. That's averaged across our 7 municipalities. New assessments will come out in 2024, but they won't come out until this summer. So that is a blended rate across our 7 municipalities. Our 5 ballot propositions our community will be voting on May 21st to approve the annual school budget, to approve the purchase of 6 school buses and 1 utility vehicle to update our fleet to make sure it's safer to bring our students to and from school, to create a new transportation capital reserve, once again, not so that we can just buy our diesel buses, but so that if the electric bus mandate ever comes to fruition, we can buy an electric bus if we are told that's all that's available. But along with that, we can buy the charger, and along with that, we can put in the infrastructure to actually make that bus operate. A separate proposition for the libraries, and then finally, the last proposition to elect 3 members to the Board of Education. Those members, in order, are Matt Goodman, Tracy Altman, Adam Eldridge, and Lindley Brecht. So Nick, like I promised you, it's 6:17.
Look at you.
All right. I think we did okay on time. And I know I moved quickly through that presentation, but once again, if you have tuned in digitally to see our presentations, you're going to see many similarities to the presentations back in February, March, and April. But at this point, Tracy, I believe it's an opportunity for any member of the community to ask questions if they would like.
Do you want me to read this?
Well, it's not public comment, so I think if you think it's appropriate, you can.
Can I ask a quick question?
You may. Sure. Absolutely.
Hopefully quick. That slide that you said was added to the back of the packet.
Yes, use of reserves?
Yes, we have on our page 4. You said auditors noted the increase in our reserves has grown only from basic interest. So I'm just curious, are there more assertive practices that we can adopt to grow our reserves?
There are, but per our reserve plan, one of the things we approved in the fall after the audit was a reserve plan where we talked about what reserves do we want to grow. One of the things the auditor pointed out is our reserves are in stable shape, and we're also not dipping into our reserves as much. So the auditor said if you grow your reserves at a conservative rate, that's not a bad idea, but if you aggressively start adding to this reserve, eventually the comptroller is going to come by and say, you have 25% of your operating budget sitting in reserves. Why aren't you using that?
Gotcha.
Now, the comptroller doesn't also, while they will share an opinion, they don't understand how you are constantly going below the tax cap year after year and only asking for what you need. They don't take some of those factors into consideration because they're looking to write a nice headline for the comptroller's report. So you want to show that you have healthy reserves, but you also don't want to show you have too much reserves. And so far, we've been in a very good position where we may not have grown these reserves, but we've grown other reserves where potentially when we go out to our next capital project vote, we're talking about no tax impact on the community. Mm-hmm. So we've been very strategic about growing the reserves where we know the impact on the community will be great without adding more money to the school tax bill.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Great question, Mike.
Thanks.
Any other questions, folks? Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Matt, would you like to speak? Come right up to the podium.
And you have to hit the button for the microphone.
The button with the person on it. Yeah, there's 2
That should be
buttons.
more specific.
And that's okay. I know there's 2 buttons, so I wanted to say something.
Yes.
Is it red?
Nothing's happening.
See, Jeff, can you check to make sure
Turn
it's
it off and turn it back on again.
I was gonna say I can.
Yeah, Jeff. There, it's live.
It's on?
It's on. Oh, now it's on.
Okay, well, that burned up a minute, so I'll try to keep it quick. So yeah, my name's Matt Goodman, and I figured my bio's been out in the newsletter now for a little bit. And when I put it together, it kind of wanted to paint the picture of who I am and where I've kind of experienced to get here. And basically, I'm like a Swiss Army knife. I've had a lot of experiences over my professionally and at home and entrepreneurially and in public service. Everything's kind of, I've done well at, but I'm, not really exceeded superly good at anything, one particular thing. So instead of just regurgitating my bio, I thought it might be best to just have a quick minute and talk about what people could expect from me as a board member, because everything that I've done that has made me fairly successful in life may not make a good board member. I think it's a good foundation, but initially, and I've always followed the rule of thumb in professional life that it takes about 3 years to really master something. The first year is learning, and then you kind of get into a groove the second year, and then your third year you should be a master and really hone your skills at that point. And that's kind of the path I see here. I'm not looking to move the needle in any way initially. I'm just eager to absorb everything that I can and learn as much about being on this board. There's some similarities from my old town board experience, same but not quite the same, right? So I won't be going in a completely 100%, what's the word I'm looking for? Just not aware of anything that's going on. So I have some experience with budgetary, putting together a budget and monitoring all that. But, just taking all the training that is available, learn as much as I can. And I will say that I never make, I guess what's made me successful and I enjoy doing at this point beyond, cliches of kids in school, taxpayer. I'm not going to go down any of those routes with this talk, but I've always had a pretty good knack of going through complex problems, picking them out, and coming up with a good solution, not rushing to conclusions, not making an unbiased decision, not making a reactionary decision based on public pressure, politics, any sort of things that can kind of sway people's attention to making a poor decision. So with that in mind, I'm just eager to learn and be a part of a board that can continue to move the district forward and, keep the budget in mind, because that's what a lot of the noises in inquiry you're going to get from the public. So that being said, I'm really, really looking forward to the opportunity to run. It's exciting, and I'm eager to, I'm passionate about a lot of things, my kids, agriculture, but learning something new is one of those as well. And I'm very passionate about just being a good human. And I think with that in mind, I'd be a good asset to the board. And does anybody, in the public or here have any questions that I can answer? People have been looking at my backside. No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So I won't repeat what I have out there in my bio either. I'll make it short and sweet. I would love to continue my service to the board. My 6 years has been an incredible learning experience. Definitely, I would agree, it takes about 3 years to kind of get an understanding and really get into the groove of of board service and all that it entails. So I feel like I'm well suited to continue in this role because I feel like I've got a good knowledge base and good experience. I've been a member of a variety of, I think every committee now, in my 6 years. So that's given me the ability to see things from the big picture, and understand, just how schools operate in general. I have and always will be a proponent of getting more mental health and social emotional supports for students in our schools. And I think my other big rock is just improving future outcomes for all of our students. And I think connection to school is imperative for success academically, social emotionally, and in career, in life. And the more successful our students are, the more freedom and choice and opportunity they have when they leave here. So I want to continue to make sure that we are addressing the needs of all of our students and helping them all to be successful. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Adam?
Is it working? Yes. All right. My name's Adam Eldridge. I live on 255 Main Street in Phelps. Let's see. So I've owned a business in this community for 27 years with my brother. I went to school here. I left in 9th grade to be homeschooled to start the business. Since 2017, I've been working at the food cupboard at Wellsprings Food Link. I help manage, run it, do all the grocery orders, get to know the community and the food insecurity, which is a big thing in our community. I left in 22, and I completed my civil rights training down there. I don't know if it's current now, but I did complete it, so I do have that. Our town is a small town amongst us. I do my work around town, and I think I would be a good liaison for the taxpayer to communicate with the board and to the school officials. I think I would be good at that. That's one of my goals. One of my other goals is going to be the kids that come first, their safety, their health, and their education. I'm a big pusher for that, and I'm a very big advocate for that. Overall, those are my goals I would like to seek. I'm more of a doer than a bragger. I'm not that type of person. I just get it done. I think I would make a good board member. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. Hit the speak button again.
Yeah. And Lynn?
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Lynn Liebrecht. So I've been on the board since September of 23, and really it has been kind of a growing learning experience. It's definitely been eye-opening. I would say, again, kind of just going with the theme of not repeating what's in my bio, at the end of the day, what drove me to do this was just my care for our community, care for our kids, because at the end of the day, that's what really this is all about, right? Is their access to a good quality education, their access to a safe school to come to. For some of our kids, this is all that they have, right? So I think just to kind of also keep it brief, and I'm anxious at public speaking, so I'm going to hurry up here. At the end of the day, that's really what my goal is. It's just to work together as a team, as part of our community, to really make sure that our kids have what they need to prepare them for life as they leave these doors, and just to work together to provide that safe environment. So yes, I'm looking forward to running again, and hope to continue to learn too, because it's definitely, yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm on the wrong page again. All right. So, if there's nothing else, we're set to adjourn, right? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. right, we'll head down to the elementary cafeteria.
there, we're gonna head down there.